It's such a pleasure to have the Director of Cricket at Cricket West Indies, Miles Bascombe, alongside me. Miles, first of all, thanks for your time. You've been in this position just about a year and a half now. Tell us a little bit about the role Director of Cricket, what it entails, and what sort of attracted you to this position.
Well, it has a pretty broad remit. It goes anywhere from pitch and outfield quality to player and match official development, coaching development, and the management of the cricketing events, the cricketing calendar. It's pretty broad.
In terms of having sat in the chair for close to a year and a half, was it what you expected?
It was what I expected. I knew that it was going to be a lot of hard work. I just didn't know that it would have been this much. But it has been really challenging and really exciting at the same time. And you know, it's good that from time to time you see a glimpse of some of the things that we want to have happen more consistently. You see a glimpse of progress, if I dare say so. But that definitely helps me to continue fighting the good fight, as they say.
Yeah, there have been quite a few initiatives that have been implemented under your tenure, your short tenure so far. If you were to single out a few of those initiatives and the rationale behind those?
I'll start with the bonus points in Super 50 because I think that it kind of encapsulates what we want to do in terms of, you know, be very intentional with how we want to lay out our brands. I'll tell you where it started. So the head coach and his analysts looked at what the top teams in international one-day cricket have been doing, how they track across the various stages of the game, the power play 1, power play 2, power play 3, across batting and bowling, and pretty much created a game plan for what we would need to do as a West Indies team to be able to compete with the top teams in the world. And then we created some KPIs aligned to those benchmarks. And then we created a bonus point system that will be a guide for teams in the Super 50 tournament. So the bonus point is an incentive system to allow teams to head in that direction, starting to look at those KPIs for batting and bowling across the different power plays in 50 over cricket.
And it has been implemented in 2 seasons now, the second one recently completed. Is it enough data to determine some sort of efficacy of that implementation, or is it too soon?
Well, from the very first season, there was already a bit of a change. It wasn't universal across all teams, but for the teams that really embraced the system, it was apparent. Leeward Islands would have been one of them. Yeah. The West Indies Academy in the very first season would have been another. And you could see the intent, and I think that was a good start given how late that initiative was introduced. And definitely in the most recent concluded Super 50, we definitely saw a couple of 300 plus scores. We saw intent in the power play. We saw players rotate the strike well, some innovation, reverse sweeps, etc. A lot of what we really like to see going forward.
Yeah, a lot more scores being recorded, a lot more centuries as well as what we saw in that tournament. And before I interjected, you were about to give us 2 more of the initiatives that you singled out under your tenure.
The selection system, which is still relatively new. Pretty much what we have done is that we have moved the engine room of the selection back into the territories. Each of these territorial boards would have a selection panel who would have an ongoing scouting process, looking for talent within each of their territories. Therefore, between 6 of those lead selectors, you pretty much have the entire cohort of talent across all territories. So I think that has the potential to really make some changes in terms of how we get information all the way down to players, how we align our brands from the senior teams all the way down to the regional teams.
So Miles, that's two. We talk about the bonus points for the Super 50. We spoke about the selection system. That third one that you might want to mention?
The men's academy, the transition from a part-time program where they used to come in a couple of weeks before tournaments or tours, and they would do some work and go on tour, and then they return and they head home. So we have now transitioned them to being full-time, fully based in Antigua. And it's going to be a fully immersive program, complete with personal development modules, as well as having very targeted training based on their individual skill sets and at the rate at which each of them develop.
A full-time living academy for these young players. One of the greatest challenges, I'm sure, Miles, for someone who sits in your position is trying to maintain an equilibrium between player development and succession planning, whilst also trying to maintain competitiveness at the highest level. How do you plan to strike that balance, trying to nurture young talent but still having a competitive international team?
The franchises play a huge role in that. And while our regional tournaments are competitions as they were, and there is a lot of pride in terms of territories winning those tournaments, we still have to keep one eye on development. The main goal is to produce competitive West Indies teams. So it's something that we have been in discussions with the franchise coaches about, and the franchise leadership generally, about striking that balance, right? All of the franchise players, there are 15 professional players, they are in a year-long program, and you have 2 tournaments, one that takes just about 4 months, and another just about a month.
Right.
So there is a lot of time for developmental work. So what we are trying to do is to encourage the franchises to be very specific and very targeted, very individualized in the way that they go about doing that developmental work.
With the proliferation of leagues, T20 leagues, there are T10 leagues now, what are some of the main challenges that you encounter in trying to have your best players representing the West Indies team, male and female, as often as possible?
Well, we try to strike a balance. I think that there are a lot of advantages, especially in the female game, of having players being exposed to those types of tournaments. So we generally jump at opportunities to have our players go and represent in those tournaments. There's generally far less clashes in terms of international cricket and those.
So it works well.
So it works quite well in the female game for the time being. And for the men, we have generally tried to be very open in terms of our communication, have the discussions early with the players. And of course, we want the players to be able to earn as much as they could, but definitely not at the detriment of West Indies cricket teams. So you will see from time to time players will get opportunities to miss tours and partake in some of these leagues. And for us, what it is that we need to ensure that we have the bench strength to ensure that we are not fielding a team that cannot compete in the absence of these players.
Right. And
that has been a little bit easier given the progress that we have made in the T20 format, and that we are starting to see now in the ODI team. We're still in ongoing discussions with many of these players about transitioning to Test cricket.
Yeah.
For many of them, it's a case of their preparation. They'd ideally like to play some 4-day cricket.
First class, yeah.
Get some first class games under their belts and get that confidence. They know that it's a significantly different challenge in Test cricket than it is, in T20 cricket or in one-day cricket. But those conversations have been going quite well, and I expect pretty soon that we will start to see some of these players making that transition back to Test cricket.
Yeah, really excited to see some of our white ball players playing red ball cricket, and it works both ways. It would augment their performances in the white ball game as well. Miles, the West Indies team is a quite unique entity as a cricketing nation, independent islands coming together, and so it comes with its peculiar challenges. If you were to elaborate on a few of those challenges that are quite different from every other cricketing nation, what would they be?
Well, the major one I think is quite obvious. It's just the cost of tournaments specifically. We hear the cries from time to time about playing more first-class cricket, for example. But when you think of what it costs to extend our season, right, as opposed to what it would cost, you know, in a country where you can do ground travel, for example, between matches, it's quite significant. So that is the major challenge in that whenever you think about bringing players together, you know, there is already a very significant overhead. So we have to be creative. One of the things that we are trying to do is to build capacity in the territories so that we can get quality work done in the territories. We also want to streamline our programs a lot better, so that the player should be able to move seamlessly across programs with every coach that attends to him wherever he is, having a very good understanding of where he is, what areas he is currently working on in his program. And I think that if we're able to do that, you know, we can definitely be able to ensure that we have quality work being done in the territories and really dampen the impact of you know, the cost of moving people around the region.
Miles, I want to thank you for your time, for all of the information that you shared. I do not envy the position that you are in as Director of Cricket. It's certainly a challenging one, but all the best. I really like some of the initiatives that you have implemented, and long may it continue, and all success to you and to Cricket West Indies.
Thank you. Thank you, Sammy.